Welcome to the Hiring and Empowering Solutions podcast. This podcast is dedicated to providing the key ingredients to transform your employees into a dream team, creating consistent results in every aspect of your business, including your people, your process, and your profits. Your team empowerment, leadership, business development, communication, hiring, and firing. As some of the country's leading staffing and management consultants, we help business owners, i.e. entrepreneurs, and the team that support them, what we call intrapreneurs, to powerfully connect and work together to grow the business. Welcome to the Hiring and Empowering Solutions podcast. I am so excited about today's topic, workflows and delegation, with our amazing guest, Jared Correia. Many of you probably have heard of Jared Correia on his podcast through Legal Talk Network, working called the Legal Toolkit. But I do want to take some time to do a proper introduction for Jared today. Jared is an attorney as well as a founder and CEO of Red Cave Law Firm Consulting, which offers subscription-based law firm business management and consulting and technology services for solo and small law firms. Red Cave also works with legal institutions and legal-facing corporations to develop programming and content. And Jared, as a former practicing attorney, has been advising lawyers and law firms for well over a decade. He's a regular presenter at local and regional national events, including the ABA Tech Show, which many of you are very familiar with. And he regularly contributes to legal publications, including his column, Managing for Attorney at Work, and his Law Practice Confidential Advice column for Lawyerist. Jared's also the author of the American Bar Association publication, Twitter in 1 Hour for Lawyers. And as I said, he's a host for the Legal Toolkit podcast on Legal Talk Network. If you have not listened to that, I highly, highly recommend you subscribe. We'll have notes in the show notes at the bottom. And that's actually where Jared and I had met. I had listened to a podcast interview he did with a mutual colleague, and then I connected with him on LinkedIn. And right away when we started talking, it was almost as if we were finishing each other's sentences, living in the legal community for so long. So welcome, Jared. We are so happy to have you here today.
Hey, that was a long introduction. It's kind of amazing that I do all that stuff. I feel like I should sleep less.
Well, you and I were talking before we started today. I said, oh my goodness, how much coffee are you drinking? You're like, I don't even drink coffee.
That is true. Little known fact, I'm not a coffee drinker. I drink a lot of seltzer. I actually don't drink all that much stuff with caffeine, believe it or not. So,
oh my goodness.
It's relentless.
I didn't even get into the 3 different law schools that you teach at in addition to Solo Practice University. I forgot about that.
Oh yeah, that's all right. That's all right. We don't need to bore people with that. But thanks for having me on the show. This is really exciting. I think you do a great job, and I'm very happy to be asked to come on, frankly.
Oh, great. We're going to have a lot of fun today. The conversation on workflows and delegation. You and I've discussed this in great detail when we're both talking, obviously you are as well, to attorneys and law firms and law firm managers and law firm administrators all across the country. And the 3 main areas of constant confusion, overwhelm, and frustration that we hear when speaking with attorneys directs to either workflow and or file management. For some people, that means the same. Some it does not. Technology and marketing are always at top of mind for most lawyers and law firm managers, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Like the 3 major topics I get into with law firm managers, like marketing, finance, technology, those are the 3 biggest. But then part of what we'll talk about today is like, these are the edges are kind of starting to blur, like people are using marketing technology now more than ever before. So what part of that is technology? What part of that is marketing? Maybe it doesn't matter, but like process managers is becoming a thing as well. So process starts to blur with technology as well. So that really allows law firms to facilitate the creation and management of workflows. So I think it's good, but it's also a lot for attorneys to kind of wrap their minds around and understand, because a lot of them are not tech savvy, and most of them never learned business management practices anywhere, including in law school.
Right, right. And it's amazing when I go through people's P&Ls or we start talking about their processes, their people and their profit, and I start dissecting and say, what is this program? What's this program? I'm just amazed at how many different programs that they have that they're paying a monthly fee and they don't even know what each of them do. And as you and I both know, even the most savvy person uses technology to possibly 15-20% tops of its possible capability, right?
Yeah, if that.
If that.
I'm always surprised at how many subscriptions law firms have, and that's like, so as cloud software has developed and these prices have flattened, like it's very easy for somebody to say, oh, I'll just buy that subscription. It's just another $50 a month or whatever, and then you do that 10, 12, 30 times over. You're starting to pay a lot of money. So oftentimes what I work with law firms doing in terms of technology is like one of the first steps is saying, okay, what subscription tools do you actually need? And then what ones are you just paying for? Because it's very easy to get sucked into a subscription model and then just keep paying it.
Right. And then where can you consolidate possibly? And we'll talk a little bit later on in regard. Yeah. Consolidate.
And then also just utilizing the software effectively. Like I think part of it is like law firms are buying redundant technology because they have features available to them in one particular software, but they don't use it. And they buy another software to cover for it. So I think for lawyers, like a lot of it is education and getting the most out of what they're doing.
I couldn't agree more, and I'm so delighted that you and I have met, and we really we're in alignment with how to run a law firm in regards to
we have one brain.
Yeah. And I'm excited because I always tell my clients, do not sign a single contract until you send it to me because I get on the phone with them and they're like, oh my God, I just bought this amazing software. I'm like, what? You have this, and this, and who's running this software? And we'll talk a little bit about delegation. Then they have nobody to run it, right?
Yeah. Yep. You're like, hold on, let me pick this apart. But that's another issue too. Like you've got a lot of the attorneys want to delegate this work to a staff person. And oftentimes that staff person is overburdened or they're not particularly interested in working with a new technology. And so what ends up happening is that like the person that the attorney is leaning on to inform them about the technology they want to use isn't particularly interested in doing a great job. And that's not necessarily the fault of the staff person. Like that's not the role they were hired for. And what you see a lot of law firms doing now is like, I find that many of the more successful law firms are hiring like non-traditional employees. So I know a lot of law firms now that have CEOs. And I know a lot of law firms now that have like people whose sole role is to manage technology purchases for the law firm. And I think that's a great idea. But somebody who's like a staff person is not necessarily assigned to that role. They didn't sign up for that, as it were. So I think it's incumbent on attorneys to spend more time to figure out the technology they're using, how that functions in terms of workflow management, process management, and just like gain some education on this because they don't have a ton of it to start with. But for lawyers, part of it is like the willingness to set aside time to do it and to get away from like the day-to-day substantive practice, at least for a little bit, with the idea that like the more efficient you are, the more of that high leverage, high paid work you can do.
I love that. I always lobby very hard for the hiring, especially if they're out of the infancy stage of the business and onto the growth stage of the business.
Yeah.
Always my first question, who's managing the technology from the workflows to the CRM? If you do have different marketing software, your social content, whatever it might be. And I'm a big proponent of non-traditional hires from the get-go when they start to level up and start to grow, because that they're always typically worried about the back of the factory, the drafting, the things of that nature, which are so easy to outsource in this day and age. And they negate the front of the house, which manages all your KPIs, your ROI, and all of your information.
Yeah. I mean, don't tell anybody, but it's true. I'm totally right about that.
So let's dive in, and can you talk to us a little bit about this concept in regards to workflows, and talk to our listeners that are either in the infancy stage or they are just so completely overwhelmed and frustrated with the workflow management. And some people might resonate or align that with file management as well, and how to build effective workflows based on technology. And maybe I know for often I hear from people, they don't know where to start. It is so overwhelming.
No, that's a lot, obviously, to unpack. And I'm glad we have several more minutes to do that. So I just had a conversation with an attorney like before we got on the phone, and it was kind of the same deal. Like, what do I do with this? Like, I don't even know where to begin. And so I told him, which I think is good advice for many attorneys, which is like, okay, you know the process for managing a case. Like, I know you like to tell your friends that like it's different every time. And it's really hard, which is why you need to hire a lawyer to do it. But practically speaking, like there are like 12 to 20 steps for each case. And when I was talking with this attorney, he's like, yeah, like there's 12 to 20 steps for each matter type. You're right. Now it's a matter of like pulling it out of my brain and putting it somewhere. And that's the challenge for most attorneys. Like they intuitively, instinctually know if they've been in practice long enough that like, I know these are 12 or 20 things I have to do. So some of the first steps you can take is to say, okay, what are the matter types within your practice? Maybe you have like 3 practice areas and there's like 12 subtypes under each of those practice areas. I don't know, maybe that's too many. So all told, you have like 30 something workflows that you could master for a particular matter type. So step 1, writing down those matter types. And then step 2 is writing down all the steps that you know. And when I say writing down, obviously, I mean, you could like type them into a document as well. And that's probably advisable. So that's the first start, is to like brainstorm, I think. Figure out what the matter types are, figure out what the tasks are, just pull it from your head. And then if you never take that step, you're never going to be able to build a workflow in the first place. So take that step and refine it. I think it's the case with this as well, that perfection is the enemy of like the good, and perfection is the enemy of like being done. So just step 1, brainstorm, figure out the case types, figure out the specific steps, and then you can build out the workflows afterwards. But that's the first thing I would do if I was a lawyer.
And if I could piggyback on that, because I love it. That's exactly what I tell people. And to your point, I think what attorneys, I have so many times where they'll show up on the call and they're like, so proud of themselves because they pulled an all-nighter and they sat in their office, and then out of frustration, they started building a process manual, which is very different than a workflow. Yeah. And they typed it up all on their own, and then they hand it and they, are looking for their gold star. And then the receptionist opens it up. They're like, that is not step 1. That's step 77. And I always tell them, get in a conference room, buy your team pizza, salad, whatever it is, take a half day out. You need everyone, from the person that is answering your phone and opening up a file to the person that is closing a file, because you're just sitting in your limited silo perspective. And I can guarantee you that you're missing 60% of what really happens, right?
Well, you're right, because the idea is that like everybody in the team is going to be involved in managing a case file, right? And so you need everybody's input. So yeah, even if you do the brain dump, then you take it to your staff and you say, all right, what am I missing? Like, what parts of this do you know of that I don't know about? Because yeah, you're right. Like the administrative part of it is like the first probably 75% of any case. Because as an attorney, like you're in the office, like printing documents all the time, potentially, right? But if somebody asked you how to change the toner, you wouldn't know how to do that. But that's an essential part of like
hopefully
the printing life cycle. And somebody has to do that. And somebody knows how to do it. You just need to extract their knowledge as well.
Yeah, indeed. I love it. So step 1, that brain dump. I always say it's easier to touch it once. So get everyone in the room at the same time and have fun with it. Make it like a retreat. Or
bring Rolos.
Yeah. Well, I did read that on your
I
website.
love roll-ups.
No.
Maybe too much. But yeah, no, I think there's different ways to do it. If you want to get everybody together at first, I think that's totally fine too. Like as long as you're getting the information out there and you're taking that first step, I think that's the most important thing. Because one of the issues with law firms is that like change management is really difficult, and moving from like an ad hoc system to a process-based system is a big change.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Wow. Okay. Tell us what you see next after conducting that brain dump.
So let's say we get everybody in the room, as you've suggested, and we've got this massive list of tasks. Now, I think the next step is determining like who handles what. So the way I see it is that there are 3 tasks that can be done in any law firm. So number 1 is administrative tasks. I think people generally know what that is. Those are tasks that the staff should be doing, and lawyers should not be touching those tasks. They should be they should be doing like the higher value billable work. The next types of tasks are substantive tasks. And there are 2 types of substantive tasks as I see it in law firms. So there are substantive tasks that non-lawyers can do, and there are substantive tasks that lawyers should do. By and large, lawyers should be doing the top of funnel of those tasks. So they should be doing the substantive tasks that only lawyers can do. And I kind of describe it like this to give an example of what I mean. So if you're using the right technology, say you're building out wills and trusts for your clients, you've got a will that needs to be done. So you as the attorney, you're going to meet with the clients because you're getting that FaceTime. You're the person who's bringing business in to the firm. And when the documents are done, you're reviewing them, and then you're presenting them to the clients for signature. But as we talked about before, there's a lot of stuff that goes into that is beyond those 2 acts. So if you're using the right technology, you're probably using a document automation system to build up a will package. So you can have your staff do that. Have your paralegal build that out. Have her make the initial edits. Send it over to you to see if there are any corrections. Have her revise it. Send it back to you. And then you're not touching that process necessarily. So as a lawyer, you're the person who's kind of being the face of the organization. You're setting up the next referral that you're going to get. You're doing the meeting with the clients. You're doing the review work. But up until that point, the documents have essentially been created by your staff, and the back office stuff has been managed by your staff by and large. And you could extrapolate that example to almost any type of practice area. You could do the same thing for immigration practice and filling out immigration forms. And any practice that is forms-based, you could utilize workflows in the same way. And if you do this effectively, as a lawyer, you're doing the highest leverage work at any time, which I think benefits the firm the most.
Yeah. And as you and I both know, attorneys are seminar junkies. They go everywhere, and
they love seminars. Yeah, it's crazy.
Conferences, call it what you will, but they all know this conceptually. There's not an attorney or business owner on the planet that doesn't know it. Yeah. That they need to be working on their top revenue producing activities, which by and large, you're in the personal service industry. It's face-to-face relationship with the exception of high-level review because it is your bar license and it is your name on the door. But the breakdown and the massive gap between knowing this conceptually and they get it to what I see, and I know I'm sure you have many, many, many stories about this. And when you get on the phone with them or you talk with them, the biggest frustration and breakdown is the gap between knowing this and actually making it happen. To your point, where you're in the conference room, you're counseling, then you hand the documents or form or whatever the building, the production that needs to occur to a paralegal, paraprofessional, what have you. And 9 out of 10 times when you are missing this workflow, so I want you guys listening today to really, really hear this, is that what the biggest frustration is because of that lack of workflow is when the attorney is left drafting the document at midnight or making changes as a client's pulling into the parking lot and the toner breaks down. And to your point, they don't know how to change a toner. And that's what causes all this massive inefficiency and frustration. And then truly what it breaks down to is lack of faith and confidence in your practice, your systems, your process, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's part of it. True too. Like, I think there's like a lack of faith on both sides in some way. So I think the problem with attorneys is that a lot of their mindset is like they know they need to be doing this stuff, but they feel like they're the only ones that can get it right. And I think the reason for that is that they've always been like the highest achievers, right? Like you go to law school, you do pretty well, you come out of law school, everybody tells you you're great, and then you become a perfectionist over time, and you feel like you're the only one who can do things correctly. And it's very difficult to break out of that mindset, to delegate to somebody, to say, hey, I trust that you can do this. Like you hear very few attorneys saying that. Like, I don't think I've ever heard an attorney say to a staff person, like, I trust that you can do this. Because, and part of it too is like the culture that exists around attorneys, because everything is based on these ethics rules. Like, and the ethics rules are relatively stringent. And it puts a lot of pressure on attorneys to like oversee everything so that no one screws up, so they don't get disbarred. Like, yeah, I was talking to an attorney today and he told me, I'm like, you should be motivated by this, which is doing your best revenue generating activities as much as possible. And he was like, I'm motivated to not get disbarred. And so the mindset for that is crazy, because you're always looking at the negative. And then how could you in that environment say to somebody else, hey, handle this, and if you screw it up, it's cool. I'm going to lose my license and I won't be able to work anymore. That's really hard for attorneys to do. So like you've really got to, when I'm talking to attorneys about workflows, it's really got to be crafted in such a way to say, look, not only is this going to work and allow you to do your revenue generating activities more often, but it's also going to have a component of malpractice avoidance. So you're not going to get in trouble for this. Like what this is going to do is actually make it easier for you to stay out of trouble.
It is. And
like
it's
that's
almost
the second piece of this.
It's like bulletproof too. I love that story that you share, because with the workflow, there's actually a piece of it that is review documents. There's a piece of it where you are meeting with the team and going through all your cases, what step in the process to make sure that you don't miss anything. And if you do, and very rarely is it something, because if you have a system and a process and you're looking at it every week or what have you, very rarely can you not catch it, grab it, and fix it and refine it. And not, I in 22 years have had probably 2 attorneys that I know of that have been disbarred, and it has not been because of the legal documents. It's been for financial reasons. It's
financial. It's calendar issues is why attorneys get disbarred.
Yes.
All the time. But the one thing I will say is like the other piece of this too is like there's distrust on the part of the attorneys for their staff, but there's also distrust on the part of the staff for the attorneys, because generally speaking, of the law firm, like the traditionalist way is the way to go. And lawyers they'll say, oh, all right, you know what? This is the year I'm going to institute workflows effectively, or this is the year we're going to move to the cloud. And what invariably happens is if you don't have some guidance on this, the attorneys will try to do that. And then 2 weeks later, they pull the plug because it's too hard. And so the staff, I think, is sitting there thinking like, we're trusting this guy to implement this workflow. And then they say, all right, like we'll just wait 3 weeks and then he'll be off on his next topic, So I think for staff people, like they've got to trust the attorney's going to do this and follow through. And a lot of times attorneys don't. But to your point about malpractice, like one of the things I like the best about workflows is it's less likely that stuff is going to fall through the cracks. So you're less likely to miss a court date. You're less likely to not input a document in time. You're less likely to screw up on a financial matter if you've got workflows in place. And I tell people like all the time, like if you've read the book, like the Checklist Manifesto, you'd know that like even for high level professionals, having checklists, having workflows is important. Like if you're a doctor who's just done like an 8-hour open heart procedure and you got to remember to take the sponge out of a patient, you might not remember that without a checklist. Like there are also reasons planes don't fall out of the sky. And that's because pilots have to do like a rigorous 100+ point checklist before that plane ever takes off. And it's the same thing for lawyers. Like I don't think lawyers give themselves enough credit for this, but if you're an attorney and you just went through like a 3-hour grueling deposition, are you going to remember to schedule the follow-up court appointment right away? Probably not. Are you going to remember to schedule like a discovery request based on something that happened at the deposition right away? Probably not. So you have to have systems in place to catch you. And if you're an attorney who's using like sticky notes attached to your computer, or you've got case files or case notes in front of the Redwell folders that you're using, like that stuff is more likely to get lost or to fall through the cracks. And if you're using the right technology, if it's backed up effectively, you're going to be far more efficient and far more on point, and it's going to be easier to share the information with everybody else so you can actually delegate effectively. So I think in many ways it's safer for attorneys to use workflows, even if that's not the general consensus view of most lawyers.
Wow. Indeed. Indeed. So I know many attorneys get it and they believe in that and they understand it. But I think to your point, if you haven't been sold on it, you definitely should be by now. So the part of it that I love that you're breaking out is there's no longer an excuse. So if it's about malpractice or what have you done, I think you've really covered that beautifully. And then in regards of where do I start? How do I start in regards to setting up the workflow? A big portion of it is the enrollment, and I'll use that word because Lainey and I have written blogs in our book and everything about that offensive D word, delegation, that attorneys use all the time. And for them, for employees, how that sounds and how that lands and how it resonates with them is I'm going to dump all the crap I don't want to do on your desk and good luck with it. And just because I don't know how to do it, I don't have time to do it. So you're going to get the shallow end of the pond, if you will. And I like it in regards to correlation with technology and workflow is this project management of it and really enrolling your team. Yes, it is delegation, but I think it starts with enrollment of saying, listen, guys, I know I'm constantly griping that we're missing deadlines. I know that you speak into the why of, I know that we're missing deadlines. We're inefficient. We're always operating hair on fire, that it's causing so much unnecessary stress. These are exact words I hear from the team.
I'm sure.
And they are like, can we please get a database management? Can we please have a workflow? But nobody knows where to start. And I love your step one of completing and orchestrating a thorough brain dump and breaking it down into the segments that you indicated. But talk to us a little bit about the delegation piece and how you get started there and what that means. So you point, and this is what I always say, you find a point person. It's not going to be you, the attorney. You don't have an IT degree. You don't have technology, and it's not the highest use of your time. So you find someone in your office or you go out and your next hire does have that piece of it. But how do you do the delegation within the workflow, within the technology, and figuring out how to parcel that out?
Like sometimes I do attorneys and I'm like, oh, who's going to do this stuff? The workflow management part of it is you need somebody to input the workflow somewhere and utilize it effectively. And sometimes people say, oh, I don't really have somebody who can do that. Or I'll have somebody say, hey, like I've got somebody who'd be awesome. They'd really enjoy doing that. And the latter is, but if you don't have that person, you got to figure out, is it you, the attorney, going to be doing it, or is it going to be the next hire? But generally speaking, like one thing I will say, a lot of the technology on workflow management has really improved legal over the last years. And that's a great thing in terms of a user interface that almost anybody could come in and use. Like mostly a willingness to try to use something because it's not all that difficult to do. So if you have even like a small amount of motivation, you should be able to make this work. And so in terms of how you make it work from a technology standpoint, like probably one of the best ways for lawyers to do it is to utilize a law practice management software, which is essentially a relational database where all your matters are going to tie to specific components of those matters. So that's where your emails are going to be, documents, notes, everything that you need, billing information, everything you need as a lawyer is going to be in one place. But what has happened over like the last 3 to 5 years is that a lot of these law practice management providers are now building in really robust workflow. technology into their systems. So that's a great place to put this. And basically, they walk you through the process of creating tasks, putting time sensitivity on those tasks, adding specific people to certain tasks and other people to other tasks, so that the people who have the appropriate tasks, like the admin tasks, are going to an admin person, the substantive tasks are going to lawyers, and just pushing it out that way. You can get that all set up within the case management system. And the beauty of this as well is that, like, if you can drill down to like whatever number it is, like those 10, 12, 20, 30 workflows for your particular cases, however many it is, you can set it up so that by creating a new matter type in the practice management system, it'll automatically generate those workflows for you. And that's the easiest way to do it. Now, if you're not somebody who uses a case management system per se, there are a bunch of different workflow tools out there that you can use. I know folks who use something like Action Step to create workflows, or they'll use like a software like Trello or Asana to create workflows, which is just task management tools, and those are free as well. So you can get started with the right technology, and it's probably not going to cost you a ton of money, and or it might be integrated with technology you're already using. So if you're a law firm, for example, that's already using a law practice management system, just check to see if they have workflow functionality. I bet you they do, and it would be a really easy way to start, especially if it's software that people in your office are comfortable with using. And like we talked about before, one of the challenges with lawyers in tech is they're probably using about 20% of the software's functionality that they buy. This might ramp you up to 30%. And then that would also potentially encourage you to use other parts of the software or other features of software that you're not using.
I love how you started this off with saying, finding someone who has some motivation around this.
That's a big part of it.
Oh my goodness. It just hit me like a ton of bricks. I really think, and I know the attorneys are probably like, well, I don't have the budget to hire blah, 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 an additional person. And how do I discern? How do I know if somebody has a motivation? And as you were talking about whether you're using something free like Trello or you're using Action Step or whatever it might be, I think it's as simple as, it really, really just hit me as you were talking. When you're in that initial step one, that brainstorming piece of the conversation, you're having fun, you're having pizza, you're having lunch, whatever it is with your entire team, and you just start mapping it out. I believe you will naturally see someone stand up and take the magic marker and go up to the whiteboard, or they'll start talking, and they'll think of it like a blueprints for building a home. They'll start talking in workflows. That's your person. It's really that simplistic of starting there and empowering them and giving them permission of, don't get into the nitty gritty of the details of the documents and the actual forms and things of that nature. But if they speak and act and or show some level of interest, motivation, excitement around this, and you don't have the budget, which most of us don't, for an quote unquote IT team, then that's your person to start with, because so much of this technology is like artificial intelligence. It's so intuitive. Yes. It is. And what also came to me as you were talking, and hopefully you'll let our listeners today get on a complimentary call of some sort with you or connect with you to, it's just somebody who knows how to ask the right questions, such as Jared, the powerful questions to ask you, what are you using this for? What do you want it to do? How many workflows do you have? What ultimately, because I think if you can, number one, pay attention. And what's coming to me, it's just be present and be aware and drop your own agenda and just enroll your team and involve them and listen to them. And then all of you get on the phone with someone like Jared. And it's that simple. Then you just carve out time in your calendar every single week, dedicated time to unpack this process and to work on each field or variable or workflow. And next thing you know, it's up and running, right?
Oh, totally. Yeah. Like, I think the point you make that you should at least have a conversation with someone is important, because, like, not to pat myself on the back too much, but like, one of the things here is that, like, there's a ton of technology in the legal space, and there's a ton of technology entering the legal space. So it's really hard for an attorney to have a reasonable understanding of what they need in terms of technology. So if you take just like the law practice management segment of legal technology, right? There's probably like 250 case management softwares out there. And as a lawyer who's doing like real substantive work all day, it's really hard to drill down on, okay, what are my best three to look at? That's a difficult choice to make. So, I mean, what I do all day is I look at legal technology, legal management issues. So it's a lot easier to talk with somebody or to review information from somebody who's got some knowledge on that, because it's really hard to do that as an attorney. And then we talked about step one before for delegating. I think step one for picking legal technology is kind of drilling down from like the 200 or so options that you see in front of you to like 3 or 4 that could actually work for your law practice. And that's a lot easier said than done, frankly.
Yeah. And then when you get down to that 3, I always say give it to the person who's going to be managing this project, because attorneys get so excited about the bells and the whistles and the reporting and the deep weeds. And yeah, we're like, all right, listen, let's just get the workflows up and running. Let's get all the tasks. And then if we want to upgrade when we, 10X this business, then we can get all those bells and whistles. And it'll be very easy to migrate the information, because we're all going to basically have a degree in IT by then, right?
Let's hope so. Yeah, I think that's where it's trending.
What I love, Jared, too, is you and I have talked about this extensively when I was really trying to understand your business model, and you're not lobbying for any software. You're not pitching any software. You're not selling a particular software, which is very, very difficult, because attorneys hear this loud and clear. Whoever you're on the phone with, they're selling their product. And what I love about Jared is he has all the knowledge in regards to different platforms out there. And in addition, is an attorney, did have attorney practice, and also in the legal community, in depth writing, speaking, podcasting, connecting, and very, very knowledgeable in that. So there's nothing in it for them to pick Clio over Asana, over Practice Panther, over Action Step, right?
Yes, I've been very careful not to become like a reseller per se of software. And so I'm very happy to tell firms look, these are a few options I think could work for you. I'm not necessarily getting anything out of that, but take a look, make your choice, but just do it in a way that's thoughtful, because I think a lot of attorneys don't. So yeah, if I will tell people to, unabashed and unrelated to any financial considerations of my own, I will say these are some softwares you should take a look at it, review them with the right people, and then make your choice, because there's going to be a choice that works for your law firm, and that's going to be different than the choice that the law firm down the street is going to be making. One cool thing about all the legal tech out there and all the legal tech that's being developed is that attorneys have more choices now than they ever have before, and I view that as a good thing.
Yes, indeed. It's a good thing as long as you have somebody who's supporting you with making the decision, navigating the options, asking you the powerful questions. Otherwise, it becomes paralyzing and they don't make a decision and do anything about it. I have many, many nuggets and value bombs here. And my takeaway is...
Did you say value bombs? I really like that.
That's not mine. That's Johnny Lee Dumas from EO on Fire. Yes, I wish I could take credit for that, but I love that term. Yes. One of the things, what's hitting me here hard is a few things. Number one, all this, habber jabber about malpractice, et cetera, and living in a very scarcity, fear based mindset is you've really driven home the fact that you're well more at risk without a workflow management and a CRM database than you without it. So hopefully the attorneys and the team are hearing that loud and clear. The second thing that I love about it is you don't have to do this alone, and you no longer get to use it as an excuse and a reason that you're overwhelmed or paralyzed because there's 200 plus different options out there. It's very simple of just dedicating and carving out the time with your team, mapping it out, hopping on the call with Jared. I'll support you guys in any way with that, and just unpacking it and figuring out what you need and deciding who on your team is going to lead that. Because I would bet my bottom dollar there's somebody that's in the building right now for most firms that can support you with that, at least as a level 1 option to at least get you on the bus of file and workflow management. And
and they're probably waiting for the opportunity.
Oh my goodness. That's exactly what I was going to say. And they are dying for you to do this. Trust me, I'm speaking with team members every single day. Even in the hiring process, I can't tell you how many people, when they say, it scares me, this firm's not growing. We're still operating off of paper calendar. There is no technology to manage I don't know how we could possibly ever grow, or how we can ever up level, or where I've hit the ceiling. I can't go anywhere else because my job is just to truly get out the pencil and erase appointments and write them in different. They don't want to live in the dinosaur ages anymore like that, because not that it's not new school, or sometimes attorneys will say to me, that candidate was a little too savvy for me. That's not what it is. It's really frightening. It's scary when you work for a business owner that operates like that, because it does not communicate that you're systematic and that there's any promise that you're truly not going to lose a client or get fired or drop something massive through the cracks.
Totally. Yeah.
The fourth thing that's coming to me loud and clear, because it's another frustration that I hear that is so powerful in this workflow and delegation conversation, is that so often I hear from team and attorneys alike, the greatest time suck and frustration and breakdown is in communication ping pong, meaning i.e. email, where a lot of times that's how they manage. I actually had a paralegal tell me.
Oh, management by email.
Management by email. I actually had a paralegal that told me every email that the attorney or anyone else in the team sends, they print out and they show up in their team meeting with a stack of email, and they go through one paper email at a time to make sure nothing falls through the cracks. So the time thievery there, the frustration.
That's why I left law practice, because we were doing stuff like that in 2005. And I was like, I'm out.
Well, thankfully you did, Jared, because we're talking today. So there's so many strategic byproducts from this. And hopefully our listeners today are truly, I know it's a wish. It's whenever I see people, tell me about your goals. Tell me where you want to be. Tell me where you're from. It's always number one on the list, truly even above hiring, which is what I talk about all day long, is the file and workflow management and a database management, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And like, task management workflows is only one part of that. So you want to have your documents aligned correctly and working for you. And like a lot of that is like, oftentimes I'll meet attorneys and everything's very siloed. Like I'll say, where are your documents? And they'll say, well, I guess I'm on my documents folder in my computer. And then I have some in Dropbox, and then I've also got some in OneDrive, and then my kid has a computer that was my old computer, and there's documents on there. Like getting it into one place, like one document storage container, is really important. And then that allows you to add, speaking of workflows, that allows you to have like a paperless workflow, which is going to make you a ton more efficient. And then we talked about law practice management software. So how do you aggregate all this data in a way that it's not siloed, that everybody can share it effectively? And so document management, file management becomes extremely important. Payment management, believe it or not, is like a thing for lawyers as well, because a lot of lawyers are like collecting on money that they've already done the work for. That's kind of how it works when you're taking retainers and then doing hourly work after that. So like managing accounts receivable is a really important thing for lawyers. And that's been disrupted somewhat by e-payments. So all this stuff we've been talking about today, like workflow management, process management, like there are a lot of different components to this. And there's not a single law firm I know that is at 100% peak efficiency. for all these things. So it's almost always a work in progress. But as we were talking about previously with like task management, it's got to start somewhere. So you have to take that first step.
Yeah. I can't, I have to say this when you're talking about the file management and payment. I have had so many attorneys when they get rid of an associate or paralegal, whether they leave on their own accord or they're asked to leave, when they finally start having somebody else dig through their work, how many times they find checks. I had a law firm that found checks from 10 years ago in a stack file that they couldn't even cash anymore.
Yeah. Stale checks is like a big problem in law firms, and people don't realize that. But this is like a subspecies of like a larger problem in law firms, which is that lawyers are generally really bad at organizing things. So things, generally speaking, not just checks, often fall through the cracks. And when those are appointments, when those are court dates, when those are trust account checks, like then you're setting yourself up for failure. And I think delegation, like we've talked about today, is a great first step to better manage people so that you're not as much of a micromanager. You're not always concerned about being disbarred. And it frees you up to work in a way that's efficient and successful, the way that many small business managers work who are not worried about adhering to an ethics code constantly. It just takes a lot of pressure off, but lawyers have a hard time taking that first step.
And I think a lot of it is because they're not empowering their team, and no surprise you're going to hear me talking about that. But I really think it's as simple as sitting down with them and just sharing what you need and what your goals are and finding out who the right person, because my experience, once you give them permission, once you empower them, and once you let go and give them a responsibility and authority with your high level overseeing, coaching, mentoring, there's really no need for quote unquote management anymore, right?
No, well, I'm a big fan of hiring is like the thing, right? And you know about this better than anybody, but like hiring the right people is important. And by the right people, I mean, you want to hire people who are intelligent enough to do the job that you give them. You know, if you have to be a micromanager, it's partly a problem with how you're hiring people, because in an ideal situation, like my philosophy has always been, if I'm going to hire somebody, I want somebody to be able to do that job on their own, more or less. And I just have to step in on a fairly irregular basis. So hiring smart people, and then step 2 of that, which is I think hiring smart people and then letting them do the job that you hired them to do without a significant amount of interference, is a really important thing. But lawyers, as we've talked about, traditionally have not done that. So creating workflows frees you up to figure out, like, okay, this person I've hired to do this job, I trust them to do this job well. And I can actually get like a verifiable system in place that shows me that they're working and what they're working on. Like that's really important, I think.
Yes, indeed. Well, thank you so much, Jared, for your time today. In the bottom of the show notes, we will have information in regards to how to connect with Jared through Red Cave Law Firm Consultant. In addition, I am really going to plug this hard for you to join his podcast of Legal Toolkit.
Yeah,
phenomenal.
Check out both our podcasts.
Yes. So I'll put those at the bottom of the show notes. Let people know how to connect with you. I cannot recommend enough. Don't do it alone. Definitely, Jared is a person who has a very neutral position, nothing in it other than to lead you on the right path based on his over a decade of experience in this regard. So we look forward to you. I really want to have you back on, and let's talk about marketing, because you and I didn't even have an opportunity to
talk for a second about marketing.
Yeah.
We'll have a follow-up. We'll do a sequel.
Yes. Well, great. Thank you for being with us today. Again, you really want to look at the show notes of our listeners today and connect with Jared through the Legal Toolkit podcast and or his website at Red Cave Law Firm Consulting. Thank you, Jared, for being our guest today.
Thanks, Molly. This was awesome.